Imagine this. A single mom is just trying to afford groceries. Her whole world is about to shatter when her 5-year-old son picks up a wallet. Not just any wallet, but one belonging to the city's most ruthless billionaire. What shocking secret does that stolen leather hold that will change both their lives forever? Watch now to find out.
Nausicaa had counted the coins and crumpled bills twice that morning, folding them into the secret pocket of her worn purse like a fragile promise as she steps out. The shopping mall was alive with noise, children laughing, carts rolling, music humming from bright store speakers, but for Nausicaa, it all felt distant, like she was walking underwater. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pushed the shopping cart through the aisles, picking goods carefully, shelf by shelf. Hamburgers, candies, a small toy car Obina had been begging for, a pink stuffed rabbit, Chioma fell in love with at first sight. She placed them gently into the cart, telling herself, just this once they can feel like normal kids. It had been a hard month, rent late, electricity unstable, the twins constantly asking questions she didn't want to answer. Today, she wanted to give them a slice of joy. Just one. But when she reached the counter, reality hit back like a slap. The cashier scanned the items, each beep sounding louder than the last. Nausicaa swallowed hard. When the final total flashed, her heart dropped. It's far bigger than her budget. A painful silence wrapped around her. The twins stood on tiptoe, eager, their small faces glowing with excitement. Chioma hugged the pink rabbit to her chest. Obina rolled the toy car up Nausicaa's arm, giggling. Nausicaa's throat tightened. I'm sorry, she whispered to the cashier, voice cracking. Please remove some items. She reached into the cart, her hand trembling as she placed the hamburgers aside. Then the candies. Then the toys. Mommy! No! Obina's voice broke, too loud, too desperate, drawing the attention of everyone around. Chioma's eyes filled instantly with tears. Mommy please don't drop them. Their voices echoed through the checkout area, raw and pleading. Nausicaa froze, pain slicing through her like a knife. She forced a smile through trembling lips. We'll get them another day, okay? Mommy promises. But the twins shook their heads violently, their innocent hopes shattering right in front of her. Even the cashier looked uncomfortable, her fingers hovering above the register. Behind them, in the queue, a tall man in a dark gray coat watched the scene unfold. He had been silent the whole time, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. At first, he looked like any ordinary shopper, but there was something about his presence, something steady, refined. And then, he stepped forward. Excuse me, the man said, his voice deep and calm. Add everything back. Nausicaa snapped her head up, startled. No, sir, please, no, it's fine. I can't let you. But the man raised a gentle hand to stop her. Kids should enjoy their childhood, he said, his gaze softening as he looked at the twins. Life denies them enough already. We don't have to add to it. He tapped his card, paying for all the items, including the toys, the candies, the hamburgers, even the extra snacks Nausicaa didn't remember scanning. The twins stared at him like he was some kind of angel. Thank you, sir, they both shouted, hugging the toys to their chests. No child, he said softly, should ever have to watch their joy get put back on a shelf. He tipped his cap slightly, turned, and walked away before she could even ask his name, disappearing into the river of shoppers like rain into a lake.
Hello guys, haven't subscribed yet? Please subscribe now, hit the like button, and leave a comment to help.
Nausicaa pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders as she stepped out of the mall. 2 plastic bags dangled from her fingers, heavy with the groceries. At her side stood her 5-year-old twins, Obina and Chioma, their small hands gripping hers with the desperate trust only children could muster. Their eyes were wide at every clap of thunder, tiny bodies shivering in their threadbare coats that were already too small from last winter. "Stay close," she urged them, her voice strained against the storm's roar. "Don't let go of me, no matter what." The twins nodded obediently, their identical faces pale and freckled, mirroring each other in fear and curiosity. Obina, always the bolder one, squeezed her hand a little tighter, while Chioma clung silently, her thumb hovering near her mouth as if seeking comfort in an old habit. The parking lot was a desolate stretch of cracked pavement, packed with potholes brimming with murky rainwater that reflected the flickering neon sign of the store. Nausicaa guided them carefully, dodging the deeper puddles that could swallow a sneaker hole. But just as they reached the edge, Obina suddenly gasped, his little finger pointing downward like an arrow of fate. "Mom! Look! There, lying abandoned near a pothole that swirled with oily runoff, was something dark and out of place, a sleek black leather wallet, thick and heavy, half submerged in the grime. It didn't belong here, in this forgotten corner of the city where dreams went to die. Rain pelted it relentlessly, but it gleamed defiantly, as if mocking the poverty around it. Before Nausicaa could react, Obina wrenched his hand free and bent down, snatching it up with the impulsive innocence of youth. Water dripped from its edges, but he held it like a treasure unearthed from a pirate's chest. "Obina, no," she snapped, grabbing his wrist with a force born of panic. Her heart hammered in her chest. Why did everything always go wrong when she was already teetering on the edge? "I was just helping it," he said with wide, pleading eyes, his voice trembling slightly under her grip. "It looked sad on the floor, Mom. Like it was lost and crying." Clutched in his small hand was no ordinary find. It was a slab of sleek, black Italian leather, the edges polished smooth, the metal insignia a stylized N, glinting like a predator's eye even in the dim light. It was heavy, unnaturally so, weighted with what felt like bundles of cash and thick, embossed platinum cards that whispered of wealth beyond her wildest imaginings. Nausicaa's heart stuttered as she pried it open just enough to glimpse the crisp bills inside, hundreds, maybe thousands. This wasn't any ordinary wallet. This belonged to someone rich, powerful, dangerous. Someone who could crush her world without a second thought. "I said put it down, baby," she whispered urgently, her mind racing. What if the owner was nearby? What if they thought her boy was a thief? The twins stared up at her, Chioma's lower lip quivering as she sensed her mother's fear, Obina's defiance melting into uncertainty. They were her everything, two little miracles born from a love that had long since turned to ash, leaving her to raise them alone in a world that chewed up the vulnerable. But before Nausicaa could even register the pit of dread twisting in her stomach, a shadow fell over them like a storm cloud descending. It was a presence, not just a person, a wave of cold, expensive fury that made the air thicken. The rain seemed to hush for a moment, as if even nature held its breath. "Who took my wallet?" The voice was a low, dangerous rumble, slicing through the mundane parking lot noise like a knife through silk. Nausicaa froze, her back rigid, every instinct screaming at her to run. The twins instinctively retreated behind her legs, their small bodies pressing against her for protection. Obina clutched the wallet tighter, his knuckles white, while Chioma let out a tiny whimper that pierced Nausicaa's soul. Nausicaa looked up slowly, her breath catching, and felt her soul freeze solid. A tall man stood just 4 steps away, his silhouette cutting through the downpour like a blade. He wore a dark charcoal designer suit, perfectly tailored despite the rain that beaded off it like diamonds on glass. His shoes were spotless, defying the mud and puddles. His watch alone, a gleaming Rolex encrusted with what looked like real diamonds, probably cost more than her entire apartment. His face was sculpted in stone, hard jaw, razor-sharp cheekbones, eyes darker than the storm clouds above, burning with a fury that could incinerate worlds. Nduka Okonkwo, billionaire, CEO, ruthless corporate king. Everyone in the city knew his name, had seen his face plastered on towering billboards and glossy business magazines, heralding him as the untouchable titan who built empires on the ruins of competitors. But how had he lost something so precious? Nausicaa's mind flashed to the moments before she'd glimpsed him earlier, striding out of a sleek black limousine parked haphazardly at the lot's edge, his phone pressed to his ear in a heated argument. "No, you listen to me," he'd snarled into the device, his free hand gesturing wildly as he paced. In his distraction, the wallet must have slipped from his pocket, tumbling unnoticed into the pothole during a particularly vehement turn. He'd stormed back toward his car without a backward glance, the rain masking the soft thud of leather on asphalt. And now, here he was, realizing his loss too late, his empire's king reduced to a man scrambling in the mud. "The boy," he said coldly, pointing a manicured finger at Obina, who peeked out from behind Nausicaa's leg with terrified eyes. "He took my wallet." "He didn't steal anything," Nausicaa snapped back, her voice laced with a mother's fierce protectiveness as she stepped in front of the twins, shielding them like a human wall. Chioma buried her face in Nausicaa's coat, her tiny shoulders shaking, while Obina held the wallet out tentatively, as if it had suddenly become a bomb. "He found it on the ground, right there in that puddle. We were just trying to do the right thing." "You expect me to believe that?" Nduka scoffed, his lips curling in disdain as rain dripped from his perfectly coiffed hair. "That a child from this neighborhood just found a wallet with $10,000 inside and didn't plan to run? Or worse, that his mother wasn't orchestrating the whole thing?" He glanced dismissively at her worn handbag, slung over her shoulder like a badge of defeat, and the contempt in his voice was a physical blow, resurrecting memories she had buried under years of struggle, nights scraping by on ramen, dodging eviction notices, watching her twins go without the toys their classmates flaunted. Gasps and whispers rippled from the small crowd of shoppers who had gathered nearby, umbrellas tilting as they gawked. Nausicaa felt the familiar burn of judgment crawl over her skin. Poor neighborhood. Single mother. 2 children in worn shoes, their innocence now tainted by accusation. Easy target. "You should be thanking him," she said dangerously, lifting her chin despite the tremor in her hands, her eyes locking onto his with unyielding fire. "Because if anyone else had found it, you would never see it again. My children don't steal. They're good kids, better than you'll ever know." Nduka's eyes narrowed as he stared at the twins, his gaze lingering on their wide, frightened faces. Obina extended the wallet toward him with a shaky hand, Chioma peeking out just enough to whisper, "We're sorry, mister," her voice barely audible over the rain. For a split second, something flickered in those dark eyes. Regret? Recognition of their vulnerability? Or was it just the storm playing tricks? The tension hung thick, the crowd holding its collective breath, as Nduka reached out, his fingers brushing Obina's in a moment that could shatter everything, or change it forever. Obina stood tall, his tiny body trembling but brave. "It's your wallet," he said softly, holding it out. "I don't want your money. Mommy says honest hands bring blessings." Something flickered across Nduka's face. Shock. Confusion. Recognition. His gaze dropped to the children's faces, their eyes, their noses, their expressions. They looked familiar. Too familiar. His hand brushed Obina's as he took the wallet. For a split second, his fingers lingered. "What is your name?" he asked the boy, his voice suddenly lower. "Obina." "And you?" he asked Chioma. "Chioma." His throat tightened. Nduka Okonkwo went utterly still. It wasn't just the eyes, it was the sharp, angular jawline, the specific curve of the brow, the shocking resemblance that was undeniable, even across 5 years and a lifetime of regret. It was like looking into a pair of ghostly mirrors of his own childhood portrait. His breath hitched. He forgot the missing wallet, the money, the crucial encrypted drive hidden in the billfold. His corporate mask shattered. "How old are they?" he demanded, his voice now dangerously soft, a velvet trap. "5, Nausicaa whispered, her world tilting. "5, he echoed. The word hung in the air, a 5-year timeline of a hidden past, a reckless night, and a subsequent, brutal disappearance. He'd searched relentlessly, used every resource, but the woman he knew as Eve had vanished without a trace, leaving only a ghost and a devastating void. "And your father?" he whispered, lifting his eyes to Nausicaa. Silence crushed down between them. Nausicaa's body stiffened. "They don't have a father," she said coldly. "Not one that ever cared enough to stay." Enduka took a slow step back as if struck. But his gaze never left the twins. And a terrifying thought began to bloom in his mind. It couldn't be. Yet the truth stared at him through two tiny faces. He stalked back to the sedan, leaving Nausicaa swaying in the parking lot, the thunder finally breaking overhead, washing away the scene but not the terrifying reality of what she had just done. She had handed her children's father the evidence of his own secret life. That same night, rain still whispering against her cracked windows, Nausicaa bolted awake at the sound of thunderous knocking at her front door. Who could it be at this hour? She grabbed a kitchen knife and crept closer. "Who is it?" she called out. "Enduka Okonkwo." Her blood turned to ice. She opened the door slowly. He stood there again, same powerful presence, same sharp gaze, but now something else lingered behind his expression. Urgency. Conflict. Curiosity. "I need to speak to you," he said. "Now." "You have no reason to be here," she snapped. "Yes, I do," he replied. "Because those children, your twins, they are mine." The knife slipped from her hand. Clattered to the floor. "You're insane." "I remember you, Nausicaa," his voice lowered. 5 years ago. That charity gala. The storm. The one night I never stopped thinking about. Her heart pounded as the memories rushed back. The music, the laughter, the mistake that had changed everything. "You vanished," she rasped. "And now I've found what you never told me I had." She shook her head, backing away. "You don't get to walk back into my life with money and arrogance and take my children." "I'm not here to take them," he said. "I'm here because I already lost them once, and I won't lose them again." The twins rounded the corner behind her, sleepy-eyed. "Mommy, who is that man?" Chioma asked. Obina stared. "Is he the wallet man?" Enduka dropped to one knee in front of them. "I'm your father." The world stood still. Nausicaa's breath shattered in her chest. "You don't get to say that," she cried. "You don't get that title after 5 years of silence." His jaw tightened. "Then prove I don't deserve it." "You think flashing some cash gives you the right to walk in here and play daddy?" she spat. Enduka slipped something from his jacket pocket. A check. He placed it on her counter with surgical precision. The zeros shimmered beneath the cheap light bulb. "For their care," he said coldly, "I can provide what you clearly can't." The insult burned worse than fire. Nausicaa snatched the check, crumpled it in her fist, and hurled it back at his chest. "My kids don't need your money," she snapped. "They need love. They need stability. And you? You're not that." Behind her, little Chioma's voice piped up. "Mommy is he really our daddy?" The question shattered the air. Enduka's jaw flexed, his gaze softening just for a heartbeat as his eyes flicked to the girl. Something dangerous shifted in him, a longing he didn't want to admit. He stepped closer to Nausicaa, his voice dropping to a low growl meant only for her. "This isn't over," he said. "You can slam the door in my face tonight, but I will find the truth. And when I do," he leaned in so close she could smell the faint trace of whiskey on his breath. "Nothing in this world will stop me from claiming what's mine." Nausicaa's breath hitched, anger wed with fear, and something else she refused to name. She slammed the door in his face. The twins clung to her legs, confused, whispering questions. Nausicaa held them tight, her heart pounding in her chest. But deep down she knew. Nduka Okonkwo wasn't bluffing. And this was only the beginning.
Hello guys, haven't subscribed yet? Please subscribe now, hit the like button, and leave a comment to help.
The night was restless. Nausicaa sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the shadows dancing across the ceiling. The twins were finally asleep, curled together like puppies, their soft breathing the only thing keeping her from breaking apart completely. Her mind replayed Nduka Okonkwo's words, that deep growl, promising he'd come for what's his. Her hands shook. She pressed her palms to her face. She had never forgotten him. 19 years old, still in community college, waiting tables at a charity gala downtown. She had no business attending. One night, one mistake. She hadn't even known his real name then, just ND, the man in the tailored suit, who had looked at her like she was more than a waitress. The man who whispered promises in her ear before disappearing at dawn. And 3 months later, when her stomach began to swell, he was already gone. Nausicaa's chest tightened. She had carried the twins alone. She had given up college, picked up double shifts, endured stares, pity, and laughter. And now, after all those years of struggle, he walked back into her life with a check and a sneer. Number he wasn't taking them. Across the city, Nduka sat in his penthouse office, whiskey glass untouched in his hand. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Abodo skyline, but his mind was elsewhere. The children's faces, their eyes, his eyes. "Sir," his head of security, Arthur, entered quietly. "We've gathered information on the woman. Nausicaa Alisa, 24, works double shifts at a diner. Single mother, clean record, no prior, no history of drugs or trouble. She's poor." Nduka cut in, his voice low, barely surviving. Arthur hesitated. "Yes, sir, but she's respected. Everyone describes her as hardworking, protective of her kids." Nduka's jaw clenched. Something about those words dug beneath his armor. He shook it off. "Schedule a paternity test," Nduka ordered, setting the glass down with a sharp clink. Quietly, no headlines. "I want answers." 2 days later, Nausicaa trudged into the diner for her shift, only to be greeted by whispers. The manager pulled her aside, eyes full of discomfort. "Nausicaa, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go. Too much bad publicity. People are saying things." Nausicaa's face flushed hot. "What people?" The answer came quickly. Nduka's world bleeding into hers. Gossip blogs had already started spinning stories. Billionaire link a single mother in the hood. Her paycheck gone. Her kids' food threatened. Her pride rip roar. Nausicaa stormed outside clutching her apron. The world tilted. And then, to her horror, a sleek black car pulled up. The window rolled down. Nduka's cold eyes met hers. "Get in," he said, voice like steel. Nausicaa's fists clenched. "You did this." "I protected you," he countered. "If I hadn't buried worse rumors, you'd be on the front page by now." Nausicaa trembled with rage, but her voice was steady. You think ruining my life gives you the right to own me? Nausicaa leaned back, his jaw flexing, watching her with that same infuriating calm. Not own, he said quietly. But if those children are mine, then so are you. Nausicaa's heart slammed against her ribs. She wanted to scream, to slap him, to run. But the truth was already clawing at her. What if he was right? Get in, he repeated, voice low and commanding. Nausicaa's pulse thundered in her ears. Every instinct screamed no. She wanted to tell him to take his money, his arrogance, his entire empire, and choke on it. She wanted to march home to her babies, kiss their curls, and forget this man ever existed. But she couldn't because his shadow was already in her life, darkening everything it touched. Because the twins deserved the truth, no matter how painful. Because deep down beneath layers of fury and fear, she knew if those children were his, nothing would ever be the same again. With a sharp inhale, Nausicaa yanked open the car door and slid inside. The interior smelled like leather and power. The silence was suffocating. Nausicaa didn't speak as the car pulled away, his profile carved in steel against the city lights, his hands rested loosely on his thighs, but tension radiated from him in waves. Finally, Nausicaa broke. You think you can just bulldoze into my life, take away the only income one had, and then order me around like I'm one of your employees? Her voice shook, but not from fear, from rage. You don't know me. You don't know what I've survived to raise those children. You stop. Nausicaa cut her off, his voice cold, clipped. He turned to face her fully, and for a heartbeat, she almost flinched at the intensity in his eyes. I don't care about your pride. He said, each word deliberate. I care about the truth. And until I have it, we'll both be standing in this storm. I need to know if they are mine. The words hung between them, heavier than iron. Nausicaa's throat tightened. She wanted to scream yes just to hurt him. She wanted to scream no to shut the door on this nightmare. But the truth was complicated. They're mine, she whispered fiercely, blinking back hot tears. Mine. I carried them. I bled for them. I worked 2 jobs to keep them fed. Where were you then? Mr. Okonkwo? Where was your money, your protection? When I was 19 and scared out of my mind. Nausicaa's jaw flexed. A shadow flickered in his eyes. Something dangerously close to guilt. I didn't know, he said, quieter now. If I had, you didn't bother to find out. She snapped, her voice breaking. You disappeared. You left me alone with 2 babies and a world that laughed in my face. The car lurched to a stop. Nausicaa blinked, realizing they were no longer on the city streets, but outside a private medical building, its marble facade glowing beneath spotlights. What is this? She demanded. Nausicaa's gaze locked on hers. The test. The clinic was silent, sterile, a world of glass and steel. A nurse ushered them in without hesitation, clearly expecting them. Nausicaa's influence stretched here, too, bending rules and smoothing paths with invisible hands. Nausicaa sat stiffly in the waiting room, the twins on either side of her. Nausicaa stood near the window, his tall frame a dark silhouette against the glowing skyline. Obina fidgeted. Mommy, what are we doing here? As he smoothed his curls, forcing a smile. Just answering questions, baby. Chioma tilted her head, curious. Is he really our daddy? The words pierced like knives. Nausicaa's breath stuttered. She looked at Nausicaa, who hadn't moved. Hadn't spoken, but whose shoulders had gone rigid at the child's innocent question. Finally, a nurse appeared. "We'll just need a quick swab, Mr. Okonkwo, Miss Olisa, children." The test was over in minutes. Sterile cotton swabs, labeled vials, clinical efficiency. But to Nausicaa, it felt like her entire life had been measured and sealed into those tiny tubes. When it was done, the nurse smiled politely. "Results in 48 hours. The meeting was held in the glass and steel fortress that was Okonkwo DD Global Headquarters. Nausicaa sat opposite Nduka, flanked by a phalanx of silent, stone-faced lawyers. He had not wasted a second. The air conditioning was Arctic, matching the atmosphere. "DNA test is out, Miss Olisa," Nduka's chief legal counsel stated flatly. "There is no doubt they are yours," Nausicaa said, her hands tightly clasped. "I didn't tell you because you made it very clear you had no interest in domestic entanglement. You were leaving the country that morning." Nduka leaned forward, his elbows on the glass table. "I searched for you for 4 years, Nausicaa. I hired teams. I checked every missing person and hospital record. I turned over continents." His voice was low, for her ears alone. "Why did you run?" "Run? I was a waitress you met on a layover, Nduka. I left a note. You never answered the call." A flicker of genuine pain crossed his face, quickly masked. The note was cryptic. The number disconnected the next day. "I assumed a cruel joke, a setup. I did not assume this." He gestured toward the secure envelope detailing the twins' paternity test. The results, delivered with the sterile formality of an executive order, were a 99.99% match. The world's most private man had just discovered he was the father of twins, and the news was about to become the biggest scandal of the decade. Next day he showed up knocking. "Let me in." Her hands tightened on the door frame. "No, Nausicaa," he said softly, dangerously. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's already harder than it needs to be." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "You can't just show up and play father because you have a last name worth billions." His eyes sharpened. "I don't play. I claim." Her fury flared. "They're not trophies. They're children. They're mine." "Our children," he corrected, standing to his full height, towering over her. "And whether you like it or not, I will be in their lives." For a moment, their stares clashed, hot enough to scorch the air between them. The twins bounced with excitement, oblivious to the war raging above their heads. Finally, Nausicaa exhaled shakily and pulled the door wider. 10 minutes, she muttered. Nduka stepped inside. He didn't belong here. The apartment was small, cluttered, alive with crayons and plastic toys. Nduka looked like a polished statue dropped in the middle of chaos. He stood stiffly at first, but the twins swarmed him, tugging at his hands, showing him their drawings. Chioma pushed a paper into his palm. "That's me. That's Mommy. That's Obina." Nduka studied the stick figures with surprising seriousness. "And where am I?" Chioma tilted her head. "You weren't here then." The words hit harder than any blow. Something flickered in Nduka's expression before he carefully folded the paper and slid it into his suit pocket. Nausicaa watched, arms crossed, torn between anger and a strange ache. He looked out of place. Yet the way the kids clung to him was natural, almost frighteningly so. When Obina tugged on his hand, begging him to sit, Nduka lowered himself onto the rug, expensive trousers wrinkling. Without complaint. He let the boy pile blocks into his lap, even helped stack them into a crooked tower. Nausicaa's chest tightened. She hated how easily he slipped into their world, even for a moment. After 15 minutes, she cleared her throat. That's enough, and Duca rose smoothly. The twins groaned, begging him to stay. Tomorrow, he said simply, brushing invisible lint from his sleeve. No, Nausicaa snapped. Yes, his gaze locked on hers. I'll be back tomorrow and the day after until they know me. Her nails bit into her palms. You can't bully your way into fatherhood. His lips curved in a humorous smile. Watch me. By the end of the week, Duca was there daily, sometimes with toys, sometimes with books. Once with 2 child-sized bikes. That made Nausicaa's chest burn with humiliation. I don't want your charity, she hissed when he wheeled them up the apartment stairs. His eyes glittered. It isn't charity. It's my duty. The twins danced with joy as they pedaled in circles, oblivious to their mother's fury. At night, when Nausicaa tucked them in, she tried to erase his presence with bedtime stories and lullabies, but their whispers broke her. Daddy said he'll teach me to swim. Daddy said he'll come to my school play. Daddy said he's going to buy us a puppy. Each word was a knife. Tears burned Nausicaa's eyes. But her fury roared louder. You can line the courtroom with your gold. You can buy judges, lawyers, whatever you want. But you'll never buy me, and you'll never buy their love. For the first time, Duca's mask cracked. His voice dipped lower, dangerous, almost pleading. I don't want to buy them, Nausicaa. I want what's mine. Nausicaa's chest heaved. Then fight me in court because I will never hand them over. They stood there face to face, 2 worlds colliding, his empire of steel and glass, her fortress of stubborn love. Neither moved, neither blinked. Finally, Duca's voice cut the air, soft but lethal. This is war, Nausicaa, and I don't lose. He slid into his car, the door slamming shut with finality. The SUV pulled away, leaving her trembling on the curb, clutching the papers like broken glass. That night, Nausicaa sat at the kitchen table long after the children had fallen asleep. The legal documents lay spread before her, stark black letters on white paper spelling the threat she had feared since the day Duca Okonkwo re-entered her life. She buried her face in her hands. Tears slipped between her fingers, hot and bitter. She thought of the twins' laughter when Duca built block towers with them, of their excited whispers about him at night. And for the first time, she let herself admit the truth. He was already inside their hearts, and there was nothing she could do to stop it.
Hello guys, haven't subscribed yet? Please subscribe now, hit the like button, and leave a comment to help.
The summons came on a Saturday morning, not through a polite invitation, not even a phone call, but through a chauffeur in a black suit. Standing at Nausicaa's door with a clipped message. Mr. Okonkwo requests your presence. The children, too, Nausicaa folded her arms. Requests, she repeated coldly. The man didn't flinch. Insists. Her first instinct was to slam the door in his face, but the twins overheard. Chioma squealed. Daddy wants us. Obina bounced in excitement, with his shoes in his hands. Nausicaa's heart sank. She could not keep resisting without hurting them. And so with her chin lifted high and fury boiling beneath her skin, she let herself be herded into a glossy limousine with 2 bouncing children. The ride through Abodo was silent for her but alive with questions from the kids. Does Daddy have toys? Does Daddy live in a castle? Does Daddy have a swimming pool? Nausicaa clenched her fists in her lap. He's just a man, she said firmly. Don't expect anything more. But even she wasn't prepared for what awaited them. The Okonkwo estate rose like something out of another world. A gold iron gate swung open to reveal a sprawling mansion, its white stone walls gleaming. against manicured gardens, and fountains that glittered like diamonds under the morning sun. Marble steps led up to massive doors taller than any she'd ever seen. The twins gasped in unison. "It is a castle," Shioma whispered. Nausicaa's throat tightened. She wanted to hate it, to scoff at its excess, but even she was silenced by the scale of it all. And then Enduka appeared. He descended the steps like a king surveying his kingdom. Dark suit, sharp, eyes colder than steel, his presence commanding every inch of the vast estate. "Welcome," he said simply, though his gaze softened almost imperceptibly as it lingered on the twins. Nausicaa's spine straightened. "Don't welcome me like this is some fairy tale. We're only here because you dragged us." His lips twitched. "Dragged?" Your children seem thrilled. Indeed, the twins were already tugging free, racing toward the fountains with squeals of delight. Enduka let them go, watching them as if cataloging every movement, every smile. He turned to Nausicaa. "Let them see what's possible." Her eyes burned. "You think chandeliers and marble floors make you a father? You think this house erases the years you left us struggling?" Enduka's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he gestured toward the doors. "Come inside." The mansion swallowed her whole. Marble floors gleamed like ice. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceilings. Oil paintings worth more than her entire neighborhood lined the halls. Every step Nausicaa took felt like trespassing. The children ran wild, touching, gasping, laughing. Shioma twirled in the grand foyer. Obina pressed his face to a 12T aquarium while running circles around a spiral staircase. Nausicaa followed slowly, shame prickling her skin. She felt the eyes of Enduka's staff, maids in crisp uniforms, a butler with an arched brow, guards standing too still. Their stars pierced her thrift store dress, her scuffed shoes. They didn't see her as a guest. They saw her as an intruder. Enduka walked beside her, silent but alert. He noticed her stiff posture, the way she kept tugging her sleeves down to hide the fraying cuffs. He said nothing, but his eyes missed nothing. Finally, he led her into a dining hall so vast it made her dizzy. A table stretched the length of the room, set with silver and crystal. The children scrambled into chairs far too big for them. A maid appeared with platters of food, steaming pancakes, fresh fruit, eggs cooked to perfection. The twins dug in immediately, giggling through mouthfuls. Their small faces glowing with joy. Nausicaa, however, could barely touch her plate. She sat rigid, aware of every servant watching, every whisper hidden behind polite smiles. Enduka leaned back in his chair, studying her. "They look happy." She shot him a glare. "They're children. They'd be happy with pancakes at Waffle House. Don't fool yourself into thinking this is about you." "Yet they asked me to teach them to swim." He counted smoothly. "They want me here." Her chest squeezed. "You're confusing them." His voice lowered. "Or maybe I'm showing them the truth they've been denied." Her hand slammed against the table before she could stop herself. The children jumped, startled. "Don't you dare," she hissed, voice shaking with fury. "Don't you dare make this about me holding them back. I gave up everything for them. I worked until my body broke just to keep them clothed and fed. You." Her voice cracked, tears burning her eyes. "You weren't there." For the first time, silence settled over Enduka. He didn't defend himself, didn't spit back his usual steel-edged words. He simply looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Finally, he said quietly, "You're right. I wasn't there, but I am now, and I won't leave again." Nausicaa's breath hitched. She hated how sincere he sounded, how his voice wrapped around her like a promise. She looked away, swallowing hard. After breakfast, Nduka took them on a tour. The children ran through hallways lined with Persian rugs, climbed into canopy beds, and squealed at the sight of a swimming pool glittering like liquid sapphire. Nausicaa stayed back, arms crossed, trying not to cry. They looked so small, so thrilled, so unaware of the war between their parents. At the end of the tour, Nduka gathered them in the grand hall. His voice was gentle as he knelt to their level. "This is your home, too. You can come here anytime." The next week was a blur of high-stakes, agonizing choices. Nduka didn't attempt to ease into fatherhood, he tackled it like a merger. He bought the block where Nausicaa lived, secured the highest-rated private preschool, and hired 3 levels of security. Nausicaa, still reeling, insisted on one condition, that the children would know nothing until she was ready. "You don't get to buy your way into their lives, Nduka. You earn it." He watched her, a woman who had fought fate and poverty alone, and for the first time, the billionaire felt true humility wash over him like a cold wave crashing against unyielding cliffs. In Nausicaa's defiant eyes, he saw not just the mother of his children, but a survivor who had shielded them from the world's cruelties without a single plea for help. "Agreed," he said, the single word a contract more binding than any document, sealing their fates in a pact forged from DNA results and unspoken regrets. But the press was circling like vultures over fresh carrion. The story of the wallet, now twisted by anonymous leaks into a salacious tale of attempted theft, a desperate single mother's ploy, and a dramatic, spontaneous DNA test that revealed the twins as Nduka's long-lost heirs, had exploded across tabloids and social media. Whispers of gold digger and scandalous secret family haunted Nausicaa's every step, turning her quiet life into a nightmare of flashing cameras and judgmental stares. And lurking in the shadows, pulling strings with the precision of a spider weaving its web, was Zainab Anyora. Zainab, a calculating socialite CEO whose beauty was as sharp and unforgiving as a diamond blade, had been openly positioning herself as Nduka's future fiancée and indispensable business partner for years. She had clawed her way to the top of her own luxury fashion empire, Ocisa Couture, through ruthless mergers, whispered blackmail, and alliances built on fear. But Nduka's empire was the ultimate prize, a merger that would make her untouchable. Now, the twins represented an existential threat to her meticulously crafted empire, a pair of innocent interlopers who could shatter her dreams of power and prestige. Zainab wouldn't let that happen. Oh no. She had plots brewing, heinous schemes that simmered with venomous intent, designed to dismantle Nausicaa's world piece by piece. In the days leading up to the revelation, Zainab had already set her plans in motion. She hired a shadowy private investigator to dig into Nausicaa's past, unearthing every vulnerability, the abusive ex who had abandoned her pregnant and penniless, the string of dead-end jobs, the eviction notices piled like accusations. Zainab leaked selective tidbits to the press, framing Nausicaa as an unstable opportunist. But that was just the appetizer. Her true malice unfolded in darker corners. She anonymously tipped off child services with fabricated reports of neglect, claiming the twins were in danger in their squalid home. Inspectors showed up unannounced, their clipboards like guillotines, forcing Nausicaa to defend her motherhood while the twins huddled in fear, Chioma's tiny voice asking, "Mommy, are they taking us away?" Obina, ever the protector, clutched his sister's hand, his eyes fierce but brimming with unshed tears. The suspense gnawed at Nausicaa's nerves. Every knock at the door could be the end, every phone call a harbinger of loss. Yet Zainab's schemes didn't stop at harassment. She orchestrated a cyber smear campaign, flooding online forums with doctored photos of Nausicaa in compromising positions, fakes so convincing they blurred the line between lie and truth. Social media erupted, hashtags like #WalletThiefMom trending as Zainab's paid trolls amplified the hate. And in a move that chilled even her own blackened heart, she considered something more sinister, a whispered alliance with Nduka's business rivals to expose fabricated evidence of Ngosika's infidelity during their long-ago fling, planting seeds of doubt about the twins' paternity. The clock ticked relentlessly, Zainab's web tightened, each strand a potential news around Ngosika's fragile new beginning. The climax arrived at the annual Okonkwo DD Foundation Gala, an event of mandatory attendance for the global elite, where fortunes were made and reputations destroyed under the guise of champagne toasts. Nduka, making his first public appearance since the scandal erupted, had insisted Ngosika and the twins join him, forcing the issue into the glaring spotlight. "We face this together," he'd growled, his voice brooking no argument, but Ngosika sensed the undercurrent of danger. The gala was Zainab's hunting ground. Ngosika, dressed in a shimmering emerald gown Nduka had purchased, held the hands of Chioma and Obina. The twins were terrified but also mesmerized by the opulent ballroom, crystal chandeliers casting rainbows across marble floors, an endless sea of glittering, hostile faces sizing them up like prey. Obina tugged at his tiny tuxedo, whispering, "Mom," everyone staring, while Chioma clung to her side, her wide eyes darting as if expecting monsters in the crowd. The air hummed with suspense, every murmur a potential dagger, as Ngosika braced for the inevitable storm. Suddenly, Zainab Anyora materialized from the throng like a venomous apparition, a vision of icy perfection in a blood-red gown that screamed dominance. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass, her eyes gleaming with the predatory thrill of the hunt. She had timed her approach perfectly, positioning herself near a cluster of reporters with microphones at the ready, ensuring her words would echo far beyond the room. "Well, well. The runaway waitress and her two little accidents," Zainab purred, her voice laced with honeyed poison, loud enough for the reporters to catch every syllable. The word accidents hung in the air like a curse, implying the twins were unwanted burdens, mistakes to be erased. Gasps rippled through the crowd as flashes erupted. "Such a shame, Nduka. It must be so inconvenient to have your bachelor status ruined by a desperate attempt at gold digging. Tell me, Ngosika, did you coach your brats to find that wallet, or was it just dumb luck in your latest scheme?" The crowd hushed, the tension coiling like a spring ready to snap, anticipating the spectacle of a social execution. Ngosika's face flushed crimson, her heart pounding as memories of Zainab's orchestrated torments flashed through her mind, the false reports, the online vitriol, the constant fear that her children could be ripped away. But before she could unleash the retort burning on her tongue, Nduka's hand clamped onto her arm, a gesture of ownership and warning, his touch both anchoring and electrifying. "Say one more word about them, Zainab," he said, his voice a low, lethal vibration that made the air pressure in the room seem to drop. The elite guests leaned in, breath held, as Nduka's eyes bored into hers like lasers. "One more word, and I will dismantle your company, your reputation, and your life, starting with exposing those anonymous leaks you've been funding. These children are my heirs, my blood, and my world. Touch them, and you'll beg for mercy." Zainab, momentarily stunned, her perfect facade cracking like thin ice, managed a final, venomous strike, her voice dripping with desperation. "And Ngosika? Is she the prize for finding your wallet? Or just another disposable toy in your collection?" The room teetered on the edge of chaos, suspense thick enough to choke on. Nduka looked at Ngosika, his hard gaze softening into something raw and unguarded, vulnerability flickering in the depths of his storm-dark eyes. He pulled her close, his arm a protective shield around her waist, the twins pressing against them like fragile anchors. "Ngosika is not a prize," Nduka declared, projecting his voice over the stunned silence, his words a thunderclap that reverberated through the hall. He was no longer speaking to Zainab, but to the world, to the press, the doubters, the schemers. She is my heart. She outranks every investor, every contract, and certainly you. Your plots end here, Zainab. I've already alerted the authorities to your little games, the forged documents, the bribes to child services. It's over. He then did what the world had never seen the formidable Nduka Okonkwo do. He lowered his head and kissed Nausicaa, a fierce, protective, public claim that silenced every whisper. It was fire meeting fire. Years of anger, resentment, and unspoken longing colliding in a single scorching kiss. Nausicaa gasped, her fists curling against his chest, ready to push him away. But the taste of him, the heat. The way his hands slid to the small of her back, pulling her closer, it unraveled her. For a heartbeat, she let herself sink into it. She let herself remember the man from that night years ago. The man who had looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. Zainab's face went paper white, her empire crumbling in real time as murmurs turned to outright whispers of shock. She turned and stormed away, defeated, her carefully constructed future lying in ruins, her heinous plots exposed like rotting foundations. But even as she vanished into the crowd, Nausicaa couldn't shake the lingering dread. Had Zainab's venom truly been neutralized, or was this just a retreat before a final, desperate strike? Later, outside, under the quiet, clearing sky where stars pierced the velvet night like promises, the twins were buzzing with a mix of awe and relief. Daddy told everyone we're his. Chioma whispered excitedly, clutching Nausicaa's hand, her earlier fear melting into wide-eyed wonder. And he kissed you, Mommy, Obina added, grinning mischievously, the same defiant grin his father wore, a genetic echo that tugged at Nausicaa's heart. Nausicaa's eyes were bright with tears, a cocktail of exhaustion, triumph, and budding hope. She looked up at Nduka. His expression was stripped of arrogance, stripped of pride, just a man, hopeful, exhausted, and desperately in love, his hand lingering on her waist as if afraid she'd vanish. Does that mean we're a family now? Chioma asked, her voice small and uncertain, echoing the fragility of their new reality. Yes, Nduka answered for them both, his hand covering Nausicaa's, securing their connection with a warmth that chased away the shadows. We are a family forever. No more plots, no more storms, just us. Nausicaa finally allowed herself to believe it. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't alone. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was home. The storm had passed, and the sun was finally rising on their unexpected future, though in the back of her mind, she vowed to remain vigilant. Zainab's defeat might be temporary, but their bond was unbreakable.
Wow. What a journey. From that desperate moment in the parking lot to that fiery, public kiss at the gala. Nausicaa and Nduka fought every storm to be together. Their story proves that even the deepest secrets can lead to the strongest love, and that a mother's fierce protection is the ultimate power. But we want to know what you think. Who was the real hero in this story? Nausicaa for her strength, Nduka for finally choosing family, or maybe even those little twin detectives, Obina and Chioma? And let's be honest, do you think Zainab is gone for good? Or is she lurking in the shadows waiting for a round 2? Drop your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into stories of secret billionaires and unbreakable family bonds. Click the bell icon to join the family.